Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Daisy. I feel like these videos don't need an introduction, but I will be reading my subscribers' spooky stories. So just a reminder, grab your snacks, grab your cobija, and let's get straight into it. Hey Daisy. Typically, I don't like to remember what I saw, as it still spooks me. I believe this incident opened something spiritual in me because after this encounter, I have experienced many more things. It's worth mentioning that this experience occurred when I was about 9 or 10 years old. At that time, I was living in an apartment with my aunt, her family of 4, another aunt and her husband, as well as my own family. Altogether, there were 10 of us, making it quite a full house. On this particular day, everything seemed as usual, with all of us following our typical routines. Nothing felt out of the ordinary until night came around. I was lying on my mom's bed in her bedroom while everyone was home. However, my mom and one of my aunts were occupied with doing laundry. The laundry room was located down a flight of stairs right next to one of the entrances to the apartment complex, so it wasn't far from our apartment. As I laid on my mom's bed, I began to feel as though I was being watched. Deciding to be brave, I ignored the sensation, grabbed my towel, and headed off to take a shower. I would always put on music, but this time I didn't. Why? To this day, I don't know. In our bathroom, we had clear panels instead of curtains on the bathtub. And while showering, that uneasy feeling of being watched crept over me again. I was in the middle of washing my hair when an impulse made me glance to my left, towards the clear panels. There, as clear as day, I saw a little boy. He had very pale skin, black hair styled in a bowl cut, and was wearing black and white striped pajamas. He didn't say anything, didn't move or smile. He simply stared. And then, with a single blink, he vanished just like that. Surprisingly, I wasn't scared, just startled. I didn't sense any positive or negative energy from the encounter. However, a few minutes later, in the window next to me, I saw a pale face with black holes where the eyes should be, and its mouth open, pressed against the glass. Now this nearly gave me a heart attack. I hurriedly finished my shower and got out of there as fast as I could. As I stepped out of the bathroom, I found everyone at the dining table looking visibly shaken. I asked, ¿Qué pasó? What happened? They explained that while my mom and aunt were wrapping up the laundry and had returned to our apartment to clean, my mom decided to check if the clothes were dry. She told my aunt she'd be right back. However, moments later, my aunt was startled by the sound of my mom yelling for help. Alarmed, my aunt hurried to the laundry room to check on my mom. She found my mom perfectly fine. Confused, my aunt asked, "Are you okay?" To which my mom replied, "Yes. Why?" My aunt then explained, "I heard you screaming for help." My mom assured that she had not said anything since she got there. Both were understandably frightened by this incident when suddenly a man dressed entirely in black entered the laundry room. They observed that he didn't seem in his right mind. He merely scanned the room, glanced at them, and then left. My mom confirmed to us that she had never seen this guy before. She believed he was a stranger who walked in the apartment complex, as our neighbors had the habit of leaving the door open. Had my aunt not heard whoever mimicked my mom's voice, who knows what would have happened to my mom. All of this unfolded while I was in the shower. I was so frightened that I didn't want to tell anyone what happened to me. But eventually, I did. Since then, I've never been the same. I sometimes see or feel things that seem not to exist. It might sound unbelievable, and there are moments I wonder if I'm just hallucinating. Yet I'm convinced what I've gone through is real. I hope you and others can believe me too. Occasionally, I catch glimpses of the little boy's black silhouette, but he's never shown his face to me again. Perhaps one day I'll share more of my experiences, as there are many. For now, thank you for listening to my first encounter with the paranormal. Hi Daisy, my name is Daniel. My wife and I enjoy watching your videos when we sit down to eat. First of all, goals, cute, but thank you guys so much. I appreciate you both, and I appreciate everyone just watching this video. Los aprecio mucho, los quiero. So, back to the story. I decided to share something that happened to me at work. One time, I was working as a maintenance technician at an apartment building. My coworker, Bob, and I both witnessed something that freaked us out as we were in an apartment repairing the floor of a washer-dryer unit closet. When we first walked into the apartment, we both felt a heavy, uneasy vibe. As we looked around inside, we noticed that the resident had statues and paintings of demonic things. The resident was in the apartment at the time, but he gave us space and went to his room. Keep in mind that when we first walked in, we felt the uneasy vibe, but we were physically and mentally fine. As we started working, we began to feel frustration, and I developed a headache. Soon after, I noticed that Bob was also starting to feel agitated. What was supposed to be an easy job became very difficult. Because of the frustration, Bob began to curse and became aggressive, so much so that I had to tell him to step away and let me take over. As I began to continue the job, I heard a whisper in my ear that said, "Hey, hey, hey." I didn't tell Bob about it since I've had paranormal experiences in the past and have learned not to give it attention. But I also understood that we had to get out of there because the vibe felt so disgusting. Bob asked me to grab a tool from right outside the front door. I went for the tool, and when I turned back, I saw a shadow walk across in front of me and towards Bob. I looked over at Bob, and he was staring at me with his eyes wide open and shock on his face. When we made eye contact, I asked him, "Did you see that?" And he replied, "Yeah, dude, let's get out of here." We left immediately without even saying bye to the resident. When we left the apartment, we told our supervisor what we had experienced, and he didn't believe us. So we dared him to go into that unit by himself. Thinking nothing would happen, he went the following day and experienced something similar. I don't remember his experience, but after that, he agreed that none of us should go into that unit by ourselves. Hi Daisy, I'm Lily, and I'm going to share a scary story that happened in Joshua Tree, California. So last winter, my parents were visiting Joshua Tree and stayed in a house close to a few other people. It was their last night there, and they decided to go stargazing in the middle of the night. They left around 8 p.m. and drove to an area in the middle of nowhere, so they could enjoy the sky by themselves. When they got there, my dad had set up a camera a couple of 100 feet away from where they were sitting to capture a time lapse. It was now around midnight, and my parents were getting ready to head back to their place. My mom had gotten in the car, and my dad went to grab his camera. Keep in mind, they were in the middle of nowhere, so it was almost completely dark, with only the faint glow of the moonlight. As my dad was collecting his camera and putting it away, he sensed something behind him. as he headed back to the car. His first thought was that it might be my mom, so he called out her name. Leah? There was no answer, and immediately the insects around him fell silent. He then realized that this presence was another being, one that wasn't friendly. He decided to act as though he couldn't sense it. He confessed to me later that he wanted to run for his life, but didn't want to risk endangering himself further. He continued walking back and heard the footsteps of the being following behind him. He was too scared to look back, and once he arrived at the car, he didn't even bother to check the mirrors. As soon as the car was on, my parents zoomed out of there and headed back to their place. My dad described feeling a negative energy that seemed to follow him. But after waking up the next morning, it was gone. I'm so thankful they made it home safely and didn't fall into the being's trap. Hi, my name is Haley. When I was between 10 and 14 years old, my dad moved us around a lot, renting different homes throughout the city we lived in. But only one house felt weird and dark from the start. There were locks on the outside of the doors, deep and long crawling spaces, and overall, just a dark presence. It started with us finding a small cemetery for 3 people in the backyard, just across the creek. Exploring different wide open spaces was not unusual for us, especially because my dad often detected metal. He never disturbed the graves or showed any disrespect towards them. However, everything changed after we went into the woods that day. Following that day, our dog, who normally doesn't bark, growl, or show any aggression, started to become aggressive. She began barking and growling at the basement, a place where nobody was allowed, and the only items down there were the washer and dryer. Shortly after that, we began to notice shadows, and small items around the house would start to go missing. A few months after we moved in, we decided to leave and move back in with my brother's mom. But we didn't leave everything behind. A spirit or entity followed us back to our original home. My brother started to have an imaginary friend with one of the names from the grave in the backyard. At first, we thought it was harmless, but then we began to feel its presence, making us uneasy in our own home. One day, my brother mentioned that his imaginary friend was making faces and scaring him. So my dad called the priest from our local church, who advised that my brother needed to tell the entity to leave and that we wanted nothing to do with it. Overall, it was a dark and horrible experience. Hello, my name is Stella. My family once traveled to Alaska, where my dad's family lives. The trip was prompted by something unusual affecting my dad, something not part of him. I could both see and sense it. It was a dark, tall presence that seemed to be constantly attached to my dad. Upon arriving at my aunt's apartment in Alaska, I immediately felt an overwhelming heaviness and lightheadedness before even entering. The energy was so intense that it left me confused and unable to think clearly. Despite this, I decided to overlook it and focused on spending time with my dad's family. Then they performed a fofo, which is Samoan for a massage, intended to expel any negative entities or energies from the person. While the adults were engaged in this, the children, including myself, were asked to stay in another room. During this time, I sensed the unwelcome presence gradually leaving my dad, but that wasn't the end of it. Later that night, I began sleepwalking, a phenomenon I had never experienced before. It felt as though whatever had been in my aunt's apartment was aware of my ability to see and sense things, and it started to toy with me by causing my baby sister to vomit continuously. I witnessed this entity again. It was tall, black, and terrifyingly hideous. Overwhelmed by fear, I eventually spoke to my dad about what I had seen. From there, we eventually left Alaska for Washington, and I prayed about the experience. It felt like a relief to be out of that apartment. Whatever had been summoned or brought forth by my dad's side of the family, it was certainly evil. I'm grateful for my ability to see and sense things, though I don't consider myself a medium or a psychic. Instead, I'm a content Christian who happens to have these senses. Hi Daisy, my name is Hector. My parents bought a 3-family house here in Hartford, Connecticut. At the beginning, it all seemed very wonderful. The house appeared perfect. There was a spacious backyard, a small play skate area, and a sizable pool. Even a little house shed situated behind the pool at the yard's end, which we used for parties and gatherings. Anyway, everything was great. The whole family was together since my mom took care of me, my brother, and about 5 of my cousins. We occupied the 2nd floor of the house for ourselves and rented out the 1st floor to someone else. One day, my parents didn't come home. The next morning, I saw my dad, injured, with my mom helping to carry him into the house. It turned out he had been in a serious motorcycle accident, and a teenage girl who was riding behind my dad without a helmet lost her life. Fortunately, he was wearing one. I later found out that my mom saw him giving the girl a ride and thought he was cheating on her. She started chasing him on the highway. Apparently, my dad suddenly stopped to confront my mom, but she collided with them, almost killing both. About 3 to 5 days later, the police came and took my parents away. My mom received about 10 years for manslaughter, and my dad got about 5 years. During this time, it's rumored that someone who knew the girl did something to our house, and things quickly turned very dark. We used to hear the dishes clattering every night as if someone was washing them, but we were all in one room, just terrified, looking at each other. Mind you, when the police came, all my cousins went their separate ways. It was just me, my older brother, and my grandma living in the house. My cousins came over sometimes, but nothing was ever the same. We all had our own scary stories about the house, but for me, what really sealed it was when I was laying in my bed, watching TV and dozing off. I started seeing the shadow of a woman at my door. I tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but every time I checked again, it seemed like she was getting closer. No features, just a dark, tall shadow of a woman. I just put the covers over me and screamed. My grandma rushed into the room and grabbed me, and I never slept alone again. Another time, I remember one of my cousins running downstairs crying, saying he saw the devil. He said it had him tied down to the bed. He couldn't move, and it told him to do some scary stuff, and that was to hurt us. My grandma hugged my cousin, and we all prayed before sleeping together. Every single night, the beds would shake by themselves. It became so frequent that many things started to feel normal to us, and the little stuff didn't really bother us anymore. Small objects moving or lights turning on and off became normal. We lived in the house for about 6 months after the accident, enduring 6 months of scary paranormal occurrences. As soon as we moved, everything was fine, and things improved significantly when my dad was released and took over caring for us. I was about 7 when that accident happened. My brother is 6 years older than me, and my cousins are all around our age. We talk about the house all the time. We later found out it was built on top of an old cemetery. So who knows what really triggered all the scary stuff. But that's my story. I'm 27 now, and thank God I haven't experienced anything like that since. So that was it for today's video, and as always, thank you to everyone that wrote in their stories. Thank you guys so much. I love them, so keep them coming. I love reading your guys' stories and sharing it with all of you guys, sharing this paranormal love. I love this community. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are doing amazing, and I hope to see you guys all in my next one. Bye.